on page 14, it says cos 2 theta. Let's write our formula for cos 2 theta. So our formula for cos 2 theta is, we can write it as different options. So we can write it as cos squared theta minus sine squared theta. Let's go and draw our picture. It says given cotan theta is 8/15 and theta is in quadrant 1, find the exact value. So let's draw what was given. So cotan, SOHCAHTOA TOA. If tan is opposite over adjacent, then cotan is adjacent over opposite. If they say that we're looking at a triangle in quadrant 1, let's draw a triangle in quadrant 1. Our adjacent is 8, our opposite is 15, and if we do Pythagorean theorem, we'll get hypotenuse at 17. All should be positive because to the right is positive, up's positive, hypotenuse is also positive. If we start to plug in, we have cos squared theta. So if we know SOHCAHTOA, we know that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent is 8 over hypotenuse is 17. So we'll do 8/17 squared minus sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So it's going to be 15 over hypotenuse 17. And we have to square that. When we do this, our final answer will be negative 161 over 289. Let's look at this next one. So if it says cosecant theta over 2. Again, we're working with that same triangle. So we know this is 15 is the opposite, 8 is the adjacent, and 17 is the hypotenuse. The formula for cosecant of theta over 2. Well, we want to first work with sine of theta over 2. So we're going to work with this, the reciprocal, because we have the formula for that. And then we'll flip the answer because the answers are reciprocals one another, right? So sine of theta over 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 1 minus cos theta over 2. Now we always want to think, is it going to be positive or negative? So if theta, right, our original triangle, they say is in quadrant 1. So if our original triangle is in quadrant 1, it's between 0 and 90 degrees. So then if we say, where is theta over 2, you have to divide 0 by 2 and 90 by 2. So we would have theta over 2 is between 0 and 45. That's in quadrant 1. And in quadrant 1, sine is positive. So we can cross that off and we know our answer is going to be positive. We have the square root of 1 minus cos theta. So cos theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 8, hypotenuse is 17. So we have square root of 1 minus cos theta is opposite 8 over adjacent 17, all over 2. We can replace the 1 with 17 over 17. So in the numerator, we have 17 minus 8, which is 9, over 17, all over 2. And then we can simplify and we can say 9 over 17, this is a 9, 9 over 17 divided by 2 or multiply. So divided by 2 over 1 is the same as 9 over 17 times 1/2. So this would be 9 times 1 or 9 over 17 times 2 or 34. So right up here we get square root of 9 over 34. Now we're going to break this apart, and we have square root of 9 over square root of 34. I'm going to see if I can simplify in the denominator. So let's see. 34, if we try to simplify that, can we divide it by anything? 34 divided by 2 would be 2 and 17, but then 17 is prime, so we can't do anything. So we're going to multiply by root 34 over root 34. So then we'll get square root of 9 times 34 over 34. We know that square root of 9 is 3, so we can write this as 3 root 34 over 34. So that's the sign. But if it said cosecant of theta over 2, we would have to flip this. So we could write this as 34 over 3 root 34. We'd have to multiply by root 34 in the numerator and denominator. So we would have 34 root 34 over 3 times 34. So 34s would cancel, and we would get root 34 over 3. And that would be our answer on that one. So we talked about if they say what quadrant is theta over 2 in, if they said what is theta, right? If they said what is theta. Well, if we look at our original problem, you can figure out what theta is by taking the inverse, right? So you can always look at your original problem and figure out what theta is by taking your inverse. So don't forget that as well. Let's look at this next problem. So for this next problem, they say sine of theta is negative 24 over 25, and theta lies between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi. So we know that theta, the angle, is between 270 degrees and 360 degrees. That's where theta is. So we can draw our triangle between 270 and 360. So down here, and we're going to put theta there. SOHCAHTOA. So we have opposite hypotenuse. So I'm going to do 24, 25. Make sure we fill in direction. So down should be negative. Hypotenuse is positive, so that looks good. When we do Pythagorean theorem, we'll get that this is 7. This makes sense. To the right is 7, hypotenuse 25, down's 24. Okay, check. If they ask us what quadrant is theta over 2, right? Quadrant is theta over 2. Well, what you would have to do is you would have to divide this theta in half, right? And then that would help you determine where your theta over 2 is. So just be careful when you're looking at a problem like that. So that would be theta over 2 would lie between 135, half of 270, and 180. So theta over 2 would lie in quadrant 2, where theta, it just says theta, was between 270 and 360. So theta was in quadrant 4 and theta over 2 is in quadrant 2, because you were just dividing those original degrees, angles, in half. So find tangent of theta over 2. So it says, what's the tangent of theta over 2? We're going to use our formula. So we have 1 minus cos of theta over sine of theta. So we have 1 minus the cosine, cos, so ca is adjacent over hypotenuse. So we have 7 over 25 all over, it's a 5. Sine of theta they gave us is negative 24 over 25. And then from there we can simplify. So we have 1 minus 7 over 25 divided by negative 24 over 25. So in the numerator, if we make this 25 over 25, we have 25 minus 7. So 25 minus 7, we would have 18 over 25 in the numerator, divided by negative 24 over 25. Change division to multiplication, flip a fraction on the right. Cancel out these 25s. And we have then negative 18 over 24, which we can simplify to negative 3/4. So come up here, we have negative 3/4. So secant of 2 theta, we need to work with its reciprocal, so we would need to work with cos of 2 theta. And for cos of 2 theta, if we did all of that, for cos of 2 theta and flipping finding the reciprocal, flipping, so we would have cos 2 theta, if we simplified, would be 527 all over 625, and we would flip it, so we'd have negative 625 over 527. So first find cos 2 theta, and then you're going to flip it. Now remember, when you are finding the cos 2 theta, you want to look at your formula, and then you're just going to plug in. So if we use our formula, let's write this down. So cos 2 theta. We have different options. You could do cos squared minus sine squared theta. It's one of the options. Doesn't matter which one you pick. So cos squared, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 7 over 25 squared minus sine squared, so negative 24 over 25. Make sure you square first, and then you add, and when you do that, you'll get 527 all over 625, and it's negative. So cos 2 theta would be negative 527 over 625, but because they asked for secant, the inverse, we then just flip that answer.